Hey guys, happy Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. From US Army veteran to global entrepreneur. I am so happy to do this episode because it's my first time that I'm going to be talking about my military experience in the United States Army. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Wherever it is that you're watching from, please post in the comments. I'm going to share with you a magnificent, fascinating story about how a kid would come from humble background, a kid who had nothing in Nigeria would come and establish himself in the United States. But first and foremost, I have to thank the United States of America for making this possible. I've always said that the United States, and I think most people can agree, is the only country on earth where you can truly become whatever it is that you set your mind to. I believe that wholeheartedly. I am 20 plus years now removed from the armed forces, but once a soldier, always a soldier. So, for those who may not be familiar with the significance of November 11th, I think most people who are not Americans or haven't served wouldn't know this, but let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about it. For my audience, most of you are based in the United States, a large part of you are based overseas. I don't know if you guys are, let's say you're in Nigeria. Does Nigeria celebrate Veterans Day? So, Veterans Day is an honor and celebration of American soldiers who served and are serving all over the world. Federal buildings are closed today. Majority of banks are closed. Federal parks are closed. The United States Post Office, USPS, is closed. Today is the day, November 11th, that veterans get to sit down, have a day off, and enjoy the day. Federal employers are also closed. The private sector, not so much. When I was in the private sector, I never had a day off on Veterans Day. But as a self-employed global entrepreneur working primarily between the United States and Nigeria markets, I'm proud to don and sport this army green shirt. It means so much to me. I am a benefactor as a veteran until the day that I die. I will continue to enjoy the benefits of having served honorably in the United States Army. And I'm going to tell you how my journey started. But first of all, I just wanted to, before I proceed, once again wish all the service members all over the world who may be watching this a happy Veterans Day. My daughter is texting me about something about pizza topping. She's 7 years old. And didn't have this when I was growing up. So my journey started in Arlington, Texas, my military journey. I was spring of 1998. I was 19 years old. Didn't really have a direction in life, didn't know what I wanted to do career wise, but I did know one thing though. I knew that I wanted to graduate college. There's a difference between saying I wanted to go to college. I knew unequivocally that I wanted to graduate college. That was the end goal, number one. Number two, I wanted to become a United States citizen because at that time I was a resident alien. Then it was called the green card in 1998. I had a green card, a resident green card. Now they've changed it to resident, just a resident card. So my message is for immigrants like myself with the opportunity to come into the land of the free, home of the brave. I have so much respect of people in uniform. The United States of America can never go wrong for me. I Every time I see someone of service, either in a military uniform or in a police uniform or in a fire uniform, if you're a firefighter, I have so much respect for that career path because when I see that uniform, I don't see the person, I see service. That is what it means to me. So coming from Nigeria, living in Arlington, Texas, 19 years old, I had a job at the time. I was working as a computer merchandiser at a store which is now defunct called Fry's Electronics. They're not around anymore. They shut down years and years ago, I believe 10 years ago. So I was a computer merchandiser selling computer components at Fry's Electronics. Components, I mean USB cables, hard drive, floppy disk at the time. That was what I did to earn a living. That was what I did to make money to take care of myself. I was living with my father and my stepmother at the time. But in the back of my head, I always knew that that job was just a temporary job to, at that time, I wasn't paying rent, but I just needed something to cover my phone bills or help buy a little bit of groceries here and there in the house, just to support my dad and my stepmom. Not as if they needed it, but that was my contribution to the family, to the household. My dad was doing well. He was a forensics clinical psychologist. He has since passed away. He passed in 2020. And my stepmother, Felicia, was an occupational therapist. So we lived in a nice, decent neighborhood in Arlington, Texas. Beautiful single story family home was where we lived. So I remember going to my dad one day, and I will never forget this. I remember it like it was yesterday. At the dining room, and I told my dad, I want to graduate college. I don't know which college I wanted to go to. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just told him the end goal. I didn't tell him I wanted to go to college. I just said, listen, I want to graduate college. The key word for me was graduate. And my father looked me dead in the eye. And the reason why I'm bearing this all is because one day I hope that my kids will watch this video. I hope that my kids will learn a little bit more about their father's journey. So, in a way, it's therapeutic for me to actually talk about this because, like I said, it's something that I've never ever discussed. I talk about it in bits and pieces, but today I'm going to dedicate this podcast to focus on my entire journey in the United States military, at least what I can remember. I've been 20 something plus years far gone from it, but it's still a part of my heart. So my dad looked me dead smack in the face and said to me, and these words, I am not paraphrasing here, these are the exact words out of his mouth. If you want to go to college, he didn't say graduate college. He said, if you want to go to college, you have to put yourself through college like I did, and walked away. Now, I didn't know what that meant. What do you mean, put myself through college? I'm 19 years old. I don't have money. I'm making $6.25 an hour working at Fry's Electronics. I think at that time it was, I don't know if it was part time or full time. All I know is 1998, Arlington, Texas. I was working at Fry's making $6.25 an hour. So I said, okay, if that's all you have to say, no problem. My father and I never really had a close relationship. As a kid growing up, we were a little bit close, but as I got older, the relationship started sort of like fading. There were certain things that my dad was doing that principally I just did not agree with, even at that early age. So as a result, there was a conflict on his lifestyle and what I was willing to tolerate at the time. So he told me, if you want to put yourself through, if you want to go to college, you're just going to have to put yourself through college like I did, and walked away. And I said, okay, no problem. I didn't say anything, didn't argue, didn't question it, didn't ask, what do you mean? He offered me zero direction. There was no pathway to accomplishing this goal of going to college. None. So I remember going back to work. I may have had a shift that same day. I don't remember because it was really, really fresh on my mind. I probably had a shift after that conversation. So I walked, um, gathered my stuff. I didn't have a car. And I think at that time, Fry's may have been like maybe 2 or 3 miles away from where we lived. So I didn't have a mode of transportation. I hardly had any money. And I remember I used to walk from home to work, cutting through people's neighborhood, cutting through people's private properties. I may have scaled a fence or two as a shortcut just to get to work. And what I would do is I would pack my work uniform, Fries at the time, white shirt, black tie, black pants. So I would pack my work uniform in my backpack. Then I'll pack my normal, I guess, road walking clothes. Because normally what happens is by the time I get to work with the Texas heat and Texas humidity, you're talking about spring of spring, April, March, April of 98. It was hot and humid in Texas. So by the time I got to work, I was literally drenched in sweat, completely head to toe. Feet hurt. Mind you, I still have a good 8 hours to stand on my feet. This wasn't a job where you go to and sit down. It was not a desk job. You had to move around, talk to customers, stock shelves, clean up, dust monitors. The only time you got your break or you had the opportunity to sit down was when you had your 15-minute break. It might have been 10 minutes at the time, I don't remember. And then your half hour or 1 hour lunch. I don't remember at the time if it was a half hour lunch that we got or an hour lunch. That's the only time you got to sit down. And you were constantly watched and micromanaged and monitored by your supervisors to ensure that you are doing your job. So I would get to work completely soaked head to toe, and I would go into the bathroom to clean up, wipe down, put my sweaty clothes into the backpack, put on my uniform, and start my day. That was what I did. That was my routine. So on the floor, on the merchandise floor, um, just doing my job, there's a coworker of mine, an Asian guy. I don't remember his name. We were just kind of shooting the breeze, dusting shelves. I think I was standing and he was squatting down. I was dusting the top shelf. He was dusting the bottom shelf. And we just got to talking, just speaking out loud our fantasies and our dreams because nobody wanted to be there. Nobody wanted to be there making $6.25 per hour, $6.50 per hour. I think at one point I got a raise to 20, I got a 25-cent raise. So it went from 6.25 an hour to 6.50 an hour. We were just kind of fantasizing. I remember just fantasizing. I just kept saying, man, and I think maybe he must have asked me what I wanted to do, or I just said it out loud. Man, I want to graduate college, man. Golly, I just want to graduate. I just kept drilling. I just want to graduate college. And he turned around and looked at me and he said, hey, you know that the US military can pay for that, right? And I stopped in my tracks. I'm like, I didn't even know what the US military was at the time. Obviously, my grandfather served and fought in the Nigerian army. That was really all that I knew. My mom mentioned it in passing. It wasn't as if she sat me down and told me his story. At that point, my grandfather had passed away. He just said it in passing. I mean, sorry, my mom just said it in passing to me. Oh yeah, yeah, your dad fought in the Nigerian Civil War. He was a soldier for the Union, for the Nigerian army. So when he mentioned that, yeah, you know that, yeah, I know you want to graduate. You know that he just kind of said it casually too. It wasn't as if, and then he turned around and started doing what he was doing. I'm like, well, what? What did you say? He said, yeah, the United States military can pay for your college if that is really what you want to do. If you really want to graduate college, the US military can pay for it. And then he added, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm giving my 2-week notice soon. And I'm like, oh man, wow, 2 weeks notice. Where are you going? Do you have another job lined up? You know, what's up? And he said, oh, yeah, I'm joining the Navy, the US Navy. And I'm like, okay. So you're leaving, you're joining the US Navy again. I didn't know that I didn't even know it was a possibility that an immigrant from another country could come into the United States and become a part of this huge machine. I didn't know that. And he said, "Yeah, I'm joining the Navy." And I'm like, "Okay, so how do you do that?" Oh, you just gotta link up with a recruiter and take a few tests, do some physicals, and if they accept you, they'll bring you on. And I'm like, "But I'm not a U.S. citizen. I have my green card." He was like, "No, that's not a problem. You could join the U.S. Army or the U.S. military with your green card. And by the way, if you want, I can give you the number. I can give you my recruiter's number, the person who made all of this happen for me. Have a conversation with him, see if it's something that you're interested in, and go from there." And I said, "Okay, that would be nice." So he gave me his. I think he wrote it down on a piece of paper. Gave me his Navy recruiter's number, and I took it. And I remember, I said, "Thank you." I think that may have been the last time that I saw him because shortly thereafter he left. So before I proceed, this is what I always, as an entrepreneur, I always tell people, talk about your goals. It doesn't matter who is listening. It doesn't matter who you're with. It could be your spouse. It could be your friends. It could be strangers. Just get into the habit of talking about your goals because you just don't know where help or assistance or guidance may come from. Until today, I still do it. Every time that I get online on this podcast and I'm sharing my activities, my entrepreneurial activities in the US and Nigeria, part of it is also hidden beneath every message, is also me talking about my goals, aspirational goals, goals that I've already accomplished, mistakes that I've made along the way. Because I don't know who may or may not be listening. And I've, to be honest with you, through some of your comments, I've gained some valuable information just based on what people comment on these podcasts, on these videos. So I am also a work in progress. Always be learning. I am always learning. And part of that is just to share with you my goals. Had I not talked to this gentleman about what I wanted to do, I don't think that I would be here today. Maybe not speaking into this microphone talking to you, my life may have gone a different direction. I may have ended up like other 18, 19, 20-year olds in Arlington, Texas at the time, where it seemed that the norm at the time in Arlington was just getting someone pregnant and having children at a very young age. I think I might have fallen into one of those traps because that was the norm. That was what you saw. So he gave me the recruiter's number and I ended up going home. I was much closer to my stepmother, Felicia, the mother of my younger brother, Nathan. We were super close. And I went up to her and I said, "Hey, I was talking to one of my colleagues at work, and this came up, that came up, and he gave me the number to the recruiter to talk to the recruiter about the possibility of joining the Navy. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to be at sea though. I don't know if I want to join the Navy. I don't know. But my grandfather was in the Army. Maybe we can kind of look into that." So began the process of trying to track down an Army recruiter. I know I didn't want the Marines, and I knew that I did not want to go into the Air Force. So we opened up the yellow pages, stick phone book at the time that had like names and numbers of businesses and people. So we opened up the yellow pages and I started looking at US Army recruiting stations. And then I found an Army recruiter. Don't remember his name, it's been so long. And I called, the person answered, introduced myself. My name is Richard Barakat. I'm interested in speaking with you about the possibility of the Army. And the recruiter, I believe that same day, I think that day was my day off. "Where do you live, Rich?" "Oh, I live on 230 Miramar, Arlington, Texas." That was our address, 230 Miramar. They've since sold the house, and he said, "Okay, are you home right now?" I said, "I am." He said, "Okay, I can be there in a half hour." I said, okay, I'll be here waiting. So the recruiter drove up a half hour later in this white government issued Ford Taurus. I think it was a Ford Taurus at the time, but it was a sedan, a four-door sedan. The recruiter came in, parked. He was well buttoned up, wore his military clean uniform, just sharp. Came and knocked on the door. I opened the door and he said, "Hey, I'm the recruiter that you, sorry, yeah, I'm the Army recruiter that you talked to. Is this a good time? Do you still want to talk about this?" I'm like, "Sure, of course." And he said, "Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't I take you to lunch?" I said, "Sure." And I told my stepmother was in the house at the time. I said, "Okay, I'm gonna go. We're gonna go for, you know, go grab a bite and listen." So he took me. We did not go to lunch to go and sit down. It was a drive-through because he was like, "So what do you want to eat, Rich?" I'm like, "I don't know, whatever." He was like, "Okay, what do you think about fast food?" I believe it was like Wendy's or so. I said, "Sure, that works." So we went, we drove through the drive-through, and he said to order whatever it is that you want. And I'm thinking, okay, am I gonna have to pay for that? Because I don't have any money. He's like, no, no, no. The military will pay for it. I must have ordered every single meal on that menu board. I must have ordered every single meal. So we took the meal, and then he said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. We're gonna drive down. Instead of going inside to sit down, why don't I just take you to the recruiting station so you can see the way our office looks? You could see the way you can see what we do. I can show you if a couple of military literature, military paraphernalia, maybe even show you some training videos and see if it's still something that you want to proceed with. And I said, sure. And then throughout that drive to the recruiting station, he started talking about my residency. Okay, so what's your resident status? I said, I have a green card. He said, okay, no, that's not a problem. Uh, we take non-citizens as well. If we decide to move forward, we're just gonna have to do a federal background check and all of that. I said it's not a problem. We don't have to do a physical. I know I was very much in physical shape at the time. "Oh, okay, that's not a problem." So we got down to the recruiting station and he gave me a couple of military, I mean, everywhere you saw this special forces and very gung ho, high level military paraphernalia, military literature, military advertising for the US Army, portraits behind his desk. He had his family photos. He started telling me a little bit about his journey, about how he served, and he's at the tail end of his career. And to close out his career, he offered to become a recruiter and bring others on board into the US Army. So that was the story he told me. And I said, okay. So we sat down, I ate my meal, I flipped through some of the magazines and the literature that he gave me. And back then, they had a VCR back then. So there was no DVD or anything like that. So he popped in a DVD and he was like, I think it was maybe a 30-second or a 60-second commercial of US Army, Army of One. At that time, that was the slogan, an Army of One. It just showed a lot of people jumping off airplanes, camaraderie, people marching, people working as a team. That commercial basically summed up everything that I, as a 19-year-old teenager, wanted. And I'm like, well, I get all this. I get all the jumping out of airplanes and I get all of the gong ho and marching and running and shooting. I get all of that. But what I really want to do uh, sir. At that time, I didn't know any better because you're not supposed to call non-commissioned officers sir. But I was a civilian. I was not yet in the military, so it was well within my right to call him sir, just out of respect. So I said, sir, thank you so much for all this, but my ultimate goal is to graduate college. And that's when he said, oh, yeah, by the way, you can have that too if you want. There's this program called the Montgomery GI Bill. The United States military on discharge. You got to earn it though. On an honorable discharge, you can get $20,000 at that time. You're talking about at the time where a semester of college was like 1,000, 2,000 at the most. They can offer you $20,000 towards your college education within a couple of years, and then he threw in the citizenship. Oh yeah, and by the way, within a couple of years, you can also the US military can fast track your path towards becoming a US citizen. I said, well, where do I sign? Oh yeah, and another thing you told me too was, so the structure is this. Back then they had 2-year enlistments. They had 2-year enlistments, 3-year enlistments, and 4-year enlistments. And he said, all right. I'm like, okay, so then tell me about the 2-year enlistment. Okay, that's fine. You can sign up for that, but you may not get the $20,000. It might be less. And I said, well, what about the 3-year enlistment? He said, well, that is the threshold. That is actually where the $20,000 comes in. If you commit to 3 years of service, you get that. I mean, he was professional. He didn't try to force me into anything. He didn't lie to me. Like you hear the stories about people saying, oh, my recruiter lied to me. He basically just told me the truth. And I said, okay, that is fine. I'm interested. Where do we go from here? And then he said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an appointment for you. You know, you're 19, you're in great shape, you look the part. I'm going to make an appointment for you to go in to Dallas. Arlington is literally sandwiched between Dallas and Fort Worth. So he said, we're going to go to Dallas and you're going to take a test called the ASVAB test. And depending on how well you do on this test, it's going to determine the job that you get in the Army. So I said, okay, not a problem. We set a date, we set an appointment, and he took me back home, dropped me off. I told my stepmother the whole thing. She was very happy. She thought I was doing the right thing based on my ambitions, based on my goals. And I remember that evening, based on the videos that I watched at the recruiter's office, I think I ended up for the first time jogging. I went for a nice jog that evening, late Arlington, Texas. I went jogging because I wanted to prepare myself physically for what was to come, because basic training was coming, and we're going to talk about that. So between that period of getting dropped off and going to Dallas for the ASVAB test was, I think, about a week. May have been a few days. I still went to work as normal, didn't say anything, did my job, trained, as in I jogged at my free time, played some basketball, just trying to stay physically fit because I didn't know what to expect, but I wanted to be prepared. So the ASVAB date comes. He gave me a little bit of things to study, what they're going to ask. So I went in, sat down, first time in Dallas. I'm around a bunch of other aspiring soldiers going into different branches, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force. The Coast Guard at the time wasn't really a big thing. It was just those main 4 branches that they were recruiting for, that at least the people that I saw were trying to go into. So I went in, sat, did the ASVAB test. ASVAB test is more, at least from what I can remember at the time, was more of a mental, it was just kind of like more of an assessment. It wasn't really about additional subscription or division. It was more about your mindset. It was more behavioral. I said subscription, subtraction. So it was more behavioral. Hey, baby.
Casey's not feeling good, so I'm gonna go grab Marty for her to hang out here.
That's fine.
So I'm just letting you know that's where we're going. We'll be back in
Okay.
probably like 30 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Love you.
All right. See ya. Yeah. So it's Veterans Day. My wife is an educator. She's a teacher, so she's off. So teachers are also off on Veterans Day. All right. Where was I? Yes, ASVAB. So ASVAB is more behavioral. They'll ask you certain questions. How would you behave under the circumstances? What do you think about this on a scale of one? Just behavioral questions like that. So I took the ASVAB test, and you don't get the results of the ASVAB test immediately. You got to wait a few days. So I was nervous because I'm like, man, this is my ticket out of here. This is my ticket towards my goal. I can't not pass. So I was under a lot of pressure. I mean, I've always been smart. I was valedictorian. I did well in school. And I was a little bit nervous. Where am I going to go if this doesn't work out? I sure as hell don't want to go back to Fry's Electronics making $6 an hour, 6.25 an hour. I don't have a pathway towards getting a college education. I don't have direction really. For immigrants, I think a lot of you can relate that the US can be quite lonely. It could be quite a lonely place for immigrants because you just don't have the support that you normally would have back home. So I was a nervous wreck for that few days waiting for the results of the ASVAB test. So finally, my phone rings after a few days, and it's the recruiter. And he said, "Hey, Rich, your ASVAB test results came back, and you did very well." So now I'm like, I was happy, jumping for joy. So then he said, "Well, now we're just gonna have to find a job for you. So we're gonna go back to Dallas. We're gonna look at the programs that they offer, and with your score, these are the types of positions or the types of jobs that." And I'm looking at this long. I'm like, wait a minute, you're telling me that I can actually pick any job on here and I can have that job? Is that what you're telling me? He said, yes. Based on your score, this is everything that you're qualified to do in the military. So I'm looking at all of these jobs and just running my fingers down. Right? Okay, this one, no, this one, no, this one, maybe, this one, no. And then I came upon a line that says petroleum supply specialist. At that time, it was called 77 Foxtrot. That was my MOS. I think that MOS has been discontinued. I think now it's like 92 Tango now. And I saw petroleum supply specialist. Oh, okay, well, tell me a little bit about this one. And the reason why I settled on that petroleum supply specialist was because my uncle back in Nigeria worked for Mobil Oil. He worked in the petroleum, he worked in oil and gas. So I'm thinking, okay, this could be a starting sort of job for me that I can maybe use it as an internship to then ultimately go into the oil and gas sector, because my uncle is a very successful oil and gas executive back in Nigeria. So that was the reason why I chose that MOS, 77 Foxtrot. So I signed, accepted the job. and did all of the paperwork that I needed to do. And then it was time to, now that we are done with all of the administrative aspect of it. I knew the branch that I was going to, the United States Army. I knew my MOS, 77 Foxtrot. Now is the time to really, now is where the rubber meets the road. Basic training. Basic training is where every enlisted member starts. And by the end of basic training, if you survive, if you pull through, if you make it, you will become a basically trained American soldier. So basic training, we set the date, we set the time. It's called the ship out date. That is when you ship out. So I think you see, now I have a job lined up. I think my salary at the time was like $20,000 a year. But then again, I didn't have to pay for housing. The military feeds you. And we're going to get into all that. So we decided to set the ship date because it's structured. So my ship out date was decided on, and I had, I think, 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks of time between shipping out and my job. So I put in my 2 weeks notice at Fry's Electronics that, I was going to resign from my position as a computer merchandiser, and they wanted to know why. I said, "Hey, I just got accepted into the US Army." Oh yeah, by the way, let me backtrack. And then I did my physical. So I passed my ASVAB test, passed my physical, and it was official. And then and then you got to swear the oath of allegiance. The oath of allegiance to the United States. You have to swear an oath. And we did all of that stuff in the onboarding part of it. So now that I was officially background check, came back clean, there was no issues, physically fit, passed my ABVAP test, did everything I was supposed to do, completed the process. And now I have to go to basic training. So the ship date was selected. I put in my 2 weeks notice at Fry's Electronics. And I had a couple of weeks to kind of just unwind. For the first time in my life, I had direction, I had purpose, and it meant the world. It changed my mindset completely. It changed my outlook completely. Just having purpose. It's the same thing. It applies to entrepreneurship as well. You can never ever get fulfillment in entrepreneurship if you don't feel like you have a purpose, whether it's a purpose to serve, a purpose to solve a problem, a purpose to help make other people's lives better. Because it's not always about the profits, it's not always about the X and O's, it's not always about the spreadsheet. It's about having a why. And for the first time in my life at 19 years old, the US military gave me that purpose. And I was ready to go. So, ship out date, bright and early. I remember it like as if it was yesterday. Recruiter came to the house, bright and early, 5 o'clock in the morning, may have been 4, picked me up. I said goodbye to my stepmother, said goodbye to my dad, and off I went. I was taken to a holding area. I mean, this whole thing is a process. And I was officially shipped out to Fort Benning, Georgia on a bus with other 18, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, all aspiring. Some had tattoos, other had cornrows. Some I was always a clean cut guy, but I had a little bit of a little fade at the time. So we ended up again, I don't know how long that drive was, that bus ride was from Arlington, Texas, or from Dallas, Texas to Fort Benning, Georgia, but it was a whole new different world. Whole new different world. As soon as we disembarked from the bus, that was when it all started. Drill sergeants in your face, yelling at you. Get down, do push ups. Who do you think you are? Look at you wearing this baggy clothes. Look at you with that crazy haircut. They were bossing you around. I didn't, I wasn't, you see, my recruiter left that part out. He didn't tell me that this was what's going to happen in basic training. He said I was going to go to train and just get basically trained. You had to stand still, stand at attention, put your hands behind your back. And you're supposed to answer yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You're talking about basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia. That is where it all started. And after they have physically, I wouldn't go as far as to call it abuse. After they physically flogged you, not physically, verbally flogged you, you're like, man, but you know what? For me, I didn't care. Anything but going back to Texas. Is this what I got to do? Is this what I got to pull through? But I always knew that basic training had an end date. It wasn't forever. I think is basic training 6 weeks or 2 months? I don't remember anymore. So I didn't see what was happening in front of me. I was looking through all of that at the end goal, which was no matter what happens, they're not going to kill me. So long as I don't die, I know I wasn't going to quit. I knew one thing: I wanted to graduate college. And another thing that I knew, I did not want to go back to Texas. So you could yell at me, scream at me, tell me to do push ups, tell me to run. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. So that was how I treated my entire experience during basic. Just knowing that at the end of it all, I am going to be transformed forever. And that was what happened. And throughout basic, so one of the first things that they do when you get in is they'll shave your head. It's not as if I mean, the women, they don't shave the women's hair. You have to tie your hair in a bun. But men, you all had to line up at the barber shop. They were just coming. They're not trying to give you a haircut. They are just shaving everything that you have on that head, shaving it off. So 1 minute, you have 100 people together, some with cornrows, some with afros, some with fades. The next minute, you were all together, stripped. Now all of the civilian clothes are gone. Now you were issued an army t-shirt and some shorts. So we all looked alike for the first time. You turn to your left, you look at your buddy next to you. We all looked the same. We all had our head shaved. It was uniform. It was unity. We were all going through the same process and the same experiences. Everything had to be in order. You were lined up for chow when you went to get something to eat. You were lined up facing the person in front of you. You go through, you get your tray, you get your meal, you eat. Once you eat your meal, you task. So created teamwork. That created It created an element of teamwork. And throughout that process, you are also taught rank. You have to be able to identify NCOs, non-commissioned officers, from COs, commissioned officers, based on their rank. And it's a vertical, it's vertical. The officers have their own ranking from a lieutenant to a general, and then the non-commissioned officers, the NCOs, they had their own ranking from a private. I was a private. Was that a private first? Private first class is like P3, right? For those who are watching, who knows? Private P1 was what I was, and then it's like P2. Then the PFC is like private first class, and then when I got out as a specialist, that's just like bordering being a supervisor. So as recruits, we had to learn the ranks. So it was a combination of classwork and a combination of field work. The classwork, and it was split evenly. The classwork, you learned rank, you go through learning the uniform code of military justice. You get to learn about paperwork and rules and regulation and what not to do. That's the classwork element of it. The field side is when we go, we will march, we will run. Then they take you to the range. Everyone was issued in the armory. We were all issued our M16 rifles, assault rifles. You signed it out with your name. At the end of the training day, we are all back at the armory. You sign your rifle back, and it wasn't like it's a rifle that was I don't know if when you sign out a rifle, when that rifle is issued to you, it's the same one throughout the duration of basic training. I'm not sure. They give you a different rifle every time. But anyway, you are taught how to make your bed. You are taught how to shoot. You're taught how to become became a marksman. You got to be able to zero your rifle. All of this is coming back as I'm talking about it. Shine your boots. They also um, screen you or assess you based on how neat you are, how put together you are your boots shine? Is the bed made? Are you able to follow commands? Do you know the difference between a first lieutenant and a second lieutenant by looking at the rank? Do you know the difference between a a staff sergeant and a sergeant by looking at the rank? These are the things that we were all tested on. And a lot of people couldn't handle the pressure. A lot of people quit. Some tried to commit suicide. When you only have, they used to say, when we had to go take a shower, they used to always say, "What are you doing scrubbing? Get in, get wet, get out." Like that was it. But I enjoyed it though. When I look back at it now, it's like, man, I wish I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. Because some things I took personal, some things I took, but I always knew, man, you're gonna have to kill me because I am not going back to Texas. And I've made this promise to myself that I have to graduate college, and this is the pathway. So we did it. We ran every morning. 4 o'clock in the morning is formation. You wake up, you line up, they'll do a roll call to make sure that nobody went AWOL in the middle of the night. AWOL is absent without leave. And then after that, we went for a 1 mile, 2 mile run. At some point, it got to a point where we're doing 4 mile runs. You went for a run every morning as part of your job. So for you to stay physically fit. Some people were not able to maintain their fitness and they were removed from service. But I did as I was told. I learned the ranks. I learned how to identify officers from non-commissioned officers, how you're supposed to salute officers and not salute non-commissioned officers. And officers are addressed as sir and ma'am, and non-commissioned officers are addressed based on their rank. Sergeant this, staff sergeant that, sergeant first class this, sergeant major this, corporal, specialist. I'm still in basic training, so we're not even there yet because everybody in basic training is private E1. The training, the obstacle courses that we went through, crawling through the mud, shooting live rounds. I'm going to tell you about how we got gassed. You're talking about 1998. Iraq was maybe the fourth largest military in the world at the time. Saddam Hussein was out there just tearing things up. So our training was based around how to be able to navigate around nerve agents. The gas chamber, Fort Benning, Georgia. Have you ever been through a gas chamber before? I have, as part of my training. I remember Georgia just being humid. We did a lot of training in the field, in the forest. We did a lot of, we shot a lot. You'd be amazed at how massive Fort Benning is. And going through the gas chamber was one of those things where I felt, man, that was actually the tipping point. That was my arc. For me personally. My arc meaning now everything is downhill because I have done it all. I have done all the running. I've done the marches, the 10-mile marches in our boots. I've done the field work. Now going through that gas chamber, when I made it out of that gas chamber, that was when I knew that, okay, now it's home stretch. So the gas chamber, it's interesting because you just had to wait your turn. And the way that it's set up, you get to watch each and every one of your buddies go through this building that has been bombarded with nerve agents. And then you watch them go in, go through the gas chamber. You watch them come out. They were snorting, they were coughing, they were crying, they were screaming, yelling. It was torturous. And the mind fuck is you're like, oh shit, man. My turn is coming up. I gotta go through this. That was what happened. And when my turn came to enter the gas chamber, Fort Benning, Georgia, 1998. All right, MB. That was my name, in Barricade. They just shot into MB. All right, soldier, going. And I walked into that gas chamber, and inside that gas chamber is like 20 other soldiers in there, coughing, crying, screaming. I don't know how long they made us spend in that gas chamber, but it felt as if it was an eternity. It might have been 30 seconds. And there's somebody there with a mask. There's a sergeant there with a gas mask on. Of course, they're not affected because they have the gas. You don't have that protection. And they're 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, counting down. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. 0. and you run out, and the fresh air hitting your body, the sunlight hitting your body after you've just gone through a gas nerve agent chamber even adds more pain. And it's just over with time. You start feeling a less hurt. Your eyes start clearing up. Your nose starts clearing up. Your throat starts clearing up. And then after that, we went for dinner. You spend some time out in the field. Once I got past that gas chamber, and by the way, mind you, at this point, I was already a marksman. I was completing my uh, my runs on time. I was doing the sit-ups on as many sit-ups as they wanted. I was doing all of them. I was doing everything right. And then after that gas chamber was when it was downhill for me. Now it was 2 more weeks to graduation. Now you're a little bit more polished. You're more balanced. Those who were able to withstand the rigors of basic training, those who didn't fall out. Now the sergeants, because they can also see the transformation, you can also see the transformation from a civilian to a basically trained soldier. It's night and day. And they start slacking off of you a little bit. Like 2 weeks before graduation. Now, instead of 4 a.m. call time, you start doing 6 a.m. call time. We had a little bit to eat more to eat. You got to spend a little bit more time in the shower. They gave you a little bit more time for visitations because you are now looked at as somebody with a one, unless barring any unforeseen incident. Once you make it to 2 weeks before graduation, you are now 100%. Your chances of actually graduating basic is about 100%. So they start letting you kind of go a little bit in terms of giving you more leeway on what you can do and what you can't do. Obviously, you don't want to cross the line. And then when graduation came, it was a celebration. Parents came to visit the young recruits. It was a good day. And I knew that it was a step closer to my goal. And then after basic, once you've completed basic training, you've graduated basic training. And I know I skipped I skipped a lot in terms of like some of the trainings that we did. I don't want to give a lot of that away. Now you are then shipped from basic training to advanced, I think it's called AIT, advanced something training. This is where you actually learn your job, the job that you are going to do in the military for enlisted members. So guess what? Where my AIT was? My AIT was in Petersburg, Virginia. That was actually where I went to learn petroleum supply. Beautiful time in Petersburg, Virginia. You see, now you are now an official soldier. You've passed basic training. Now you can sit. There wasn't any more of that. AIT was more of just classroom work and field work. So they'll take you out to these tank farms. You'll study petroleum and how petroleum works. There are other. You just basically studied your job. You went on the job training at AIT. So after basic training, depending on your MOS, people went their own separate ways. So if you were in the infantry, you may stay in Banning. If you chose to be in the infantry, you stay in Banning. depending on your job. Also, a lot of our friends that we graduated basic with, you hug each other, you say goodbye to each other. Everyone went their separate ways. Me, with my job, my AIT was in Petersburg, Virginia. Had a great time in Petersburg, Virginia. That was where I watched Rush Hour, Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. During my time, I'll never forget it. AIT, Petersburg, Virginia. So after you've learned your job, I think AIT is like maybe 6 weeks. Then you ask, where would you like to be stationed? You get three options. So I chose California. I think I chose Hawaii. And I forget the third option. And I got my first option, California. That was how I ended up in Fort Irwin, California for 2.5 years. Fort Irwin, California is where I met my mentor and friend, my boss, Dr. Abraham. We are still close till today after 24 years. She was the first supervisor that changed my life in terms of her leadership. Most of the things that that I've learned along the years that I applied through management, applied through my business, I learned from her. And I give her flowers all the time. We are still friends. We follow each other on social media. I believe right now she's in Cali, Georgia. I forget where she is. Atlanta, Georgia. She I know she has two residences that she rotates. Let me tell you how the point where my respect or where her leadership turned my life around. At that time, I was like 20 years old. I had gone out with some friends. I don't know if it was Sunday night, I'm not really sure. But we went out as young soldiers and had just a little bit too much to drink. My drink at that time was tequila. It wasn't as if I liked tequila, it was because somebody offered it to me. So I remember just having a little bit too much to drink, and I was hungover for a few days. I think it was a Friday night or Saturday night. But I remember that I did not remember 2 days out of my life. No memory as a result of I slept the entire time. And my roommate at the time was like, man, you would wake up, go to the bathroom, go back to bed, and that was it for 2 days straight. So then when it was time to go to formation in the morning, as a soldier, you have to report to formation in the morning, 4 o'clock. One way or another, and Sergeant, he was my boss. Like he was the one that led the soldiers. Like sorry, she rather. I remember dragging my foot. I was in major trouble because formation is not somewhere you go unprepared. When you go on formation, you have to be ready to do push-ups, you have to be ready to do sit-ups, you have to be ready to run 4 miles. I wasn't in the physical shape to do this, and I didn't know what kind of excuse I would have given. She saw me, saw that I was not gonna make it, and I was going to get in trouble. She scolded me, like chewed me up verbally. I said, soldier, get your ass in your room in the barracks right now. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to be reported for showing up to formation. What's the word I'm looking for? I was expected to be chewed up and reported for showing up hungover. That's the word I'm looking for. She said to me, go to your barracks. We'll talk about this another day. And that was what happened. She saved me, saved my career. And as a result of that decision, I owed my entire career to her. And we are friends till today. Because she could have done the opposite. She could have reported me. I could have been in trouble. It could have impacted my goals and my objective, but she took care of me. That is leadership for you. And that is what I've always lived by that mantra. The sense of leadership is not about yourself in entrepreneurship. It's about taking care of your people. It's about taking care of your workers. It's about putting leadership before self. That one decision that was made saved my life. Until today, I still tell her every day, you saved my life. Because she could have easily gone the other direction. Because a lot of squad leaders were doing that. In order for them to advance their careers, they have to throw somebody else under the bus. A lot of that was going on in the military. But she didn't do it. 25 years later, we are still friends. She knows my family. She knows my wife. She knows my kids. In the entire time that I've worked in corporate America, there isn't one leader. You see, those guys, they are managers. All these corporate guys that you see around with all these fancy titles, they are all managers. They are not leaders. If you want a true leader, hire a veteran. That's a true leader. They don't care about getting ahead by putting other people down. They don't care about building their careers by destroying other people's careers. That was true leadership. So throughout California was fun, man. I was working 77 Foxtrot, doing my job. I was successful. I was able to obtain my US citizenship shortly thereafter in 2000. I served with honor, served with distinction. I took some college classes while I was in the military. And then when I got out, I basically just transferred my college classes to Cal State University Northridge. That's where I got my college. That was where I graduated college. My goal all along. After 3 years of setting it, I graduated college in 2000. I graduated college in 2004, Cal State University in Northridge, California. So my time in the U.S. Army has shaped who I am today. That mindset never leaves you.
The discipline that I've learned throughout my time, and I'm 24, 25 years gone from it. It's still helping me translate things into results. Leadership beyond rank. When I left, I was a specialist, E4. I was a supervisor. The next rank for me would have been a sergeant. So I was a supervisor in training. But I left because I wanted to do more. I wanted to pursue other careers. I wanted to take that GI Bill, which I used, by the way, to pay for college. The military made me who I am today. Once a soldier, always a soldier. And that is why I respect so much anyone that I see in uniform, in the uniform of service, one way or another, whether as a firefighter, as a cop, or as a military, or as a soldier, globally, not just in the US. I was able to turn my military experience, I was able to translate my military experience into business innovation. So that is my military story for you. I had a great time. And I encourage anybody out there, if you're considering a career, because not everybody, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You can go into a line of service, whether in the military, whether as a cop. Do it. It will change your life. I left when I was 23. I'm recording this at 47 years old. The military, the US military, is a gift that keeps on giving. It's changed my life. It's changed my family's life. And I want to thank the United States of America. And I want to, again, thank the US military, thank the US Army for impacting and changing my life. And without them, I would not become the man that I am today and the global entrepreneur that I am today. So once again, guys, to all of the service members out there watching this, happy Veterans Day. Talk to you guys another time.